I was 20 the summer I returned to Oak Ridge, a small town I had spent most of my childhood summers in. My cousin Daniel still lived there, in the same weathered house on the edge of the fields, where the porch light glowed late into the night and cicadas hummed in the trees. Daniel and I had grown up more like brothers than cousins. Every memory of childhood, every scraped knee, every daring midnight adventure, had his name woven into it. But life had pulled us apart. He stayed in Oak Ridge, working construction with his uncle, while I left for college in the city. 3 years had passed since we last saw each other. I thought I knew what to expect when I came back. I was wrong. He was waiting for me at the bus stop, leaning against a battered blue Chevy. I recognized him instantly, but he wasn't the same boy I remembered. He'd filled out, muscle stretching his faded shirt, hair sun-bleached from working outdoors. A faint stubble shadowed his jaw, and when he smiled, it was crooked in the way that used to make me laugh. But the way his eyes lingered on me, sharp and searching, made my chest tighten. "Ethan," he said, pulling me into a hug. His voice was deeper now, warm in my ear. He held me close, closer than I expected, and when he finally pulled back, his hand slid from my shoulder with deliberate slowness, like he wasn't ready to let go. "Danny," I said, smiling, though something in my stomach twisted at the sound of his name on my tongue. The drive back to his house was easy on the surface, small talk about work classes and the people we used to know. But beneath the words I felt something else, something unspoken. Every time I glanced at him, he was already looking at me, his eyes darting away just a fraction too late. That evening, after dinner, we sat on the back porch with 2 beers, the air warm and still, the sky blushing purple. Fireflies flickered across the field. We talked about old times, how we once camped in the backyard and swore we'd never grow up, how we'd made secret promises to tell each other everything. But we weren't kids anymore. The laughter between us would fade, and in those silences, I felt the ground shift. His gaze would settle on me, steady and unreadable, and my heart would stumble in my chest. At one point, he nudged me with his shoulder, teasing me for something stupid I said. The press of his arm was casual, but it burned through the thin fabric of my shirt. I didn't move away. Neither did he. When it got late, he offered me the couch. "Sorry it's not much," he said, handing me a blanket. I shrugged. "It's fine." But before he turned to leave, he hesitated. His eyes lingered on me, and for the briefest moment I saw something there, something raw, something dangerous. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced with a tight smile. "Good night, Ethan," he said. "Good night," I whispered. I lay awake long after the house went quiet, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The look in his eyes replayed over and over, and I realized that what unsettled me most wasn't just the way he had looked at me. It was the way I had looked back. And that was the conflict I couldn't name yet, the thing gnawing at me as I listened to his footsteps fade down the hall. Something between us had shifted. Something I wasn't ready for, but couldn't deny. That night, I understood only one thing. This summer wasn't going to be like the ones before. The second night back in Oak Ridge, the sky opened up. A storm rolled in just after dinner, thunder shaking the windows as rain hammered the roof. By the time the lights flickered and went out, Daniel just laughed, moving through the dark like he'd done this 100 times before. "Power's out half the summer around here," he said, striking a match and lighting a candle on the kitchen counter. The warm glow carved shadows across his face, making his cheekbones sharper, his eyes darker. I tried to laugh too, but my chest was tight. "Guess it's back to basics, huh?" He grinned, teeth flashing in the candlelight. "Just like when we were kids." But it wasn't like when we were kids. Not anymore. We ended up on the living room floor, sitting cross-legged on either side of the candle, swapping stories while the storm raged outside. The wind rattled the shutters, thunder boomed, but all I could hear was his voice. He leaned back on his palms, muscles shifting beneath his thin t-shirt, and I caught myself staring too long. "Cold?" he asked suddenly, eyes flicking to me. I shook my head, though goosebumps had prickled my skin. The storm dragged on. When it was time to sleep, Daniel looked at the couch, then at me. "You'll freeze out here," he said, already heading toward his room. "Come on. My bed's big enough." My instinct was to argue, to insist I was fine. But I didn't. Something in his tone didn't feel like an offer. It felt like a decision already made. So I followed him down the hall, heart pounding harder with every step. His room smelled faintly of sawdust and detergent. He tossed me a pillow and pulled back the blanket. The bed was wide, but not wide enough to make me forget who I was about to share it with. We lay down side by side, both on our backs, both staring at the ceiling as rain lashed against the windows. The silence was deafening. I could feel the heat of his body inches away, could hear every breath he took. "Remember when we used to sneak out and sleep in the treehouse?" he said suddenly, his voice low. I let out a shaky laugh. "Yeah. We thought we were rebels." He turned his head toward me. Even in the dim light from the window, I could see the curve of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. "Feels the same, doesn't it?" I swallowed hard. "Not exactly." The words hung between us, heavier than the thunder outside. His arm brushed mine once, then again, whether by accident or not, I couldn't tell. But he didn't move away. Minutes passed like hours. The storm quieted, but inside that room, the air only grew thicker. Every shift of the mattress reminded me how close we were, how easily I could roll toward him, how dangerous that thought even was. At one point, he sighed and rolled onto his side, facing me. His eyes searched mine in the dim glow, his expression unreadable. My breath caught, but I didn't look away. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, two cousins, two grown men lying too close in the dark, held captive by the weight of something neither of us dared to name. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of the storm, but because I could feel him there, warm and steady, a presence I couldn't ignore. And as I lay awake, heart pounding, I knew one thing for certain: whatever was happening between us, it was too close to be nothing. The morning after the storm, I woke to sunlight spilling across Daniel's room. He was still asleep beside me, his chest rising and falling steadily, one arm flung carelessly across the sheets. For a moment I just lay there, watching him the way I shouldn't have, his lashes dark against his skin, the line of his jaw sharp in the early light. I tore my gaze away before he stirred, pretending to stretch. When his eyes blinked open, he gave me a sleepy grin that made my chest tighten. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. In truth, I'd hardly slept at all. We didn't talk about sharing the bed. We didn't mention the closeness, the way his arm had brushed mine again and again in the dark. Instead, we carried on as though nothing had happened, cooking breakfast, running errands in town, pretending we were the same cousins we had always been. But the silence between us had changed. It wasn't the easy quiet of old summers. It was sharper, charged, like a question neither of us was brave enough to ask. That evening we sat on the porch again. The cicadas screamed in the trees, and the air smelled of cut grass and rain. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring out into the field. "You ever feel like—" he paused, fiddling with the label on his beer bottle. His voice was low, uncertain. "Like there are things you want to say, but you know if you say them, nothing will be the same after?" His words lodged in my chest. I looked at him, at the tension in his shoulders, at the way his thumb circled the bottle over and over. "Yeah," I said softly. "All the time." He nodded once, jaw tight, eyes still fixed on the darkness ahead. The silence stretched, heavy, louder than any conversation we could have had. I wanted to ask him what he meant. I wanted to tell him what I meant. But the words stuck in my throat, tangled with fear and confusion. Eventually, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling hard. "Sometimes I think about how much we've changed," he said. "How we're not those kids anymore. And it feels like, I don't know, like we're not supposed to fit the same way we used to." I swallowed. "Do you want to?" That made him glance at me, really glance, his eyes dark and searching. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I can't stop noticing." The air between us pulsed with meaning. My pulse quickened, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might say what we were both circling around. But he only looked away again, taking a long drink. The conversation shifted after that, back to safer topics. But his words stayed with me, echoing in the silence of the porch. Noticing. The way he said it told me exactly what he'd been noticing, and that he knew I'd noticed too. Later that night, as we sat watching an old movie inside, our shoulders brushed on the couch. He didn't move. Neither did I. We sat like that for a long time, pretending to watch the screen, but really listening to the silence between us. When I finally got up to grab some water, I felt his eyes follow me, lingering. And when I came back, his gaze met mine, steady, unflinching. It was too much, and I had to look away. That night, lying awake on the couch, I replayed his words again and again. Things you want to say, but you know nothing will be the same after. He was right. Something had already shifted, and nothing would ever be the same again. The days after that storm blurred into one long stretch of uneasy calm. Daniel and I went about the house like nothing had happened, but every moment carried the echo of that night, the warmth of him pressed against me, the unspoken things hanging between us. He'd catch me staring sometimes, and instead of looking away, he'd hold my gaze, daring me to admit what neither of us had said out loud. It was maddening, like living with a fire that refused to burn out. One evening, we sat in the living room with a movie playing low on the TV. He sprawled across the couch, his head tipped back, while I sat rigid on the opposite end, clutching a soda I didn't even want. The distance between us felt both unbearable and necessary. "You've been quiet," Daniel said suddenly, his voice casual but his eyes sharp. I forced a shrug. "Just tired." He smirked, a knowing curve of his lips. "No, you're hiding." The words landed heavy. My chest tightened, and I hated that he could see straight through me. "What do you think I'm hiding?" "That you can't stop thinking about it," he said plainly. My grip tightened on the can, the carbonation hissing faintly as if echoing my nerve. I should have denied it, laughed it off, shifted the conversation. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "You're not wrong." For a moment, silence swallowed the room. The movie flickered across his face, painting him in shadows and light, and then he leaned forward, closing some of the distance between us. "Do you think I can?" His voice was low, almost a growl, and it sent a shiver through me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was written across my face, plain as day. He studied me, his jaw tight, his breathing slow but deliberate. "Ethan," he said, softer now, almost fragile, "what are we doing?" The question cracked something open in me. I laughed, but it came out broken. "Pretending. That's what we've been doing. Pretending this is nothing." His eyes darkened, and he ran a hand through his hair like he was trying to drag the thoughts out of his head. "We're family," he muttered. "This isn't supposed to happen." I leaned back, the words stinging, though I knew he was right. "Then why does it feel like it was always supposed to happen?" That silenced him. His eyes locked on mine, and for a second I swore he might actually close the gap. My heart pounded so hard I thought he'd hear it. Instead, he stood abruptly, pacing the room. "You don't get it, Ethan. If anyone ever found out—" "I know," I said quickly. "But it's not about them. It's about us." He froze, back to me, shoulders tense. The weight of my words filled the room, pressing on us both. Slowly, he turned, his expression torn between defiance and surrender. "You talk like this is something we can control," he said bitterly. I stood too, unable to stay seated while he unraveled. "Do you want me to stop? To go back to acting like I don't feel it every time you look at me?" He stared at me, chest rising and falling, his hands clenched at his sides. Finally, he whispered, "I don't know what I want." The raw honesty in his voice hit me harder than anything else had. For all his bravado, Daniel was as lost as I was. We stood there, the air between us heavy, the silence more intimate than any touch. I wanted to close the distance, to push past fear and reason, but I didn't. Neither of us moved. And in that stillness, I realized the cruelest part of our connection wasn't the desire itself. It was the not knowing whether either of us was brave enough to claim it. The night after our confrontation, sleep was impossible. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Daniel and I had traded. His voice lingered in my head, "I don't know what I want." That confession felt heavier than a declaration. It meant he wanted something, even if he couldn't name it. By morning I was restless. When I came downstairs, Daniel was already there, shirtless, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. The sunlight carved shadows across his chest, and I hated myself for staring. He caught me, of course, he always did. "Morning," he said, casual, though his eyes searched mine for something unspoken. "Morning," I muttered, grabbing a mug just to keep my hands busy. The silence between us was worse than any fight. I almost wished he'd snap, say something sharp to break the tension. Instead, he leaned back against the counter, watching me with that same unreadable expression. Finally, he asked, "So what now? We just pretend again?" The question hit me like a dare. I set the mug down, my palms pressing against the cool granite. "I'm tired of pretending, Daniel." His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "And if we stop?" I didn't answer. Maybe I couldn't. My silence was enough, though, because his breath caught, and the mask he wore slipped just enough for me to see the turmoil underneath. Later that day, we went into town together, errands that should have been simple. But everything felt charged, like the air before a storm. Walking side by side, our arms brushed once, and the contact was so small, so fleeting, yet my entire body reacted. He must have felt it too, because he shoved his hands into his pockets and sped up, like distance could erase it. At the grocery store, an older woman stopped us, smiling. "You two look like brothers," she said warmly. Daniel laughed too quickly, too forced. "Something like that." Her words clung to me the rest of the day. Brothers. Family. The labels that chained us, that told us what we shouldn't be. But the moment we got home, when the house was quiet again, I caught Daniel staring at me in a way that had nothing to do with family at all. That evening, I found him in the garage, working on his old motorcycle. Grease smeared his arms, sweat glistened across his forehead, and when he looked up at me, I swear the world tilted. "You're staring again," he teased, wiping his hands on a rag. "Maybe I'm done hiding it," I shot back, bolder than I felt. He froze, rag clenched tight in his fist. His eyes locked on mine, wide with shock, then narrowing like he was trying to decide if I was serious. "Ethan," my name came out like a warning, but softer, like he didn't believe his own restraint. I stepped closer. The smell of motor oil and summer heat filled my lungs. "You keep saying this is wrong," I whispered. "But you don't pull away." His breath hitched, and for a heartbeat, I thought he'd close the distance himself. Instead, he muttered, "If we do this, there's no going back." I didn't move, though my pulse raced. "Maybe I don't want to go back." The garage was silent, except for the ticking of cooling metal. His chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven breath. Then, slowly, deliberately, he set the rag aside. He didn't touch me. Not yet. But the look in his eyes said enough. The wall between us was crumbling, and it wouldn't survive much longer. When I left the garage that night, my hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the certainty that the next time we were alone, pretending wouldn't be an option. And deep down, I knew neither of us wanted it to be. The house was quiet that night, too quiet, as though it sensed what was about to happen. I sat in the living room, a book open in my lap but unread, my eyes flicking to the hallway every few minutes. Daniel's footsteps upstairs had been pacing for nearly an hour, steady, restless, like he was fighting the same battle I was. When he finally came down, barefoot and tense, the sight of him nearly unraveled me. His hair was mussed, his t-shirt clung to him like he'd been too restless to change, and his eyes, His eyes found me instantly, heavy with a question neither of us had yet answered. "You're not sleeping either?" His voice was low, rough around the edges. "No," I admitted, setting the book aside. "Couldn't, even if I tried." He lingered by the staircase, like crossing into the room was crossing into something larger, irreversible. Then, with a quiet sigh, he stepped closer. Every inch he closed made the air heavier, until he was standing across from me, close enough that I could see the tremor in his hands. "This is getting dangerous, Ethan," he said softly, almost pleading. "We're playing with fire." I met his gaze, steady, unflinching. "Then maybe we should stop pretending we're not already burned." His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but nothing came. Silence stretched between us, thick, pulsing. I could hear his heartbeat as clearly as my own, both of us waiting, daring the other to make the first move. And then it happened, small, almost nothing. His hand brushed mine where it rested on the couch. A touch so light it could have been accidental. But it wasn't. The room spun. My breath caught. Neither of us pulled away. "Daniel," I whispered, though it came out more like a prayer than a name. He leaned in, slow, deliberate, his forehead almost brushing mine. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, voice breaking. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I tilted closer, erasing the sliver of space that had kept us safe until now. Our lips met, hesitant at first, a stolen touch that should have ended instantly. It didn't. The moment stretched, deepened, and suddenly restraint was gone. The kiss grew urgent, desperate, months of suppressed desire breaking free in one unstoppable wave. My hands found his shoulders, gripping like I'd drown if I let go. His fingers tangled in my shirt, pulling me closer, anchoring me to him. When we finally tore apart, gasping, his eyes were wild, searching mine with a mix of fear and hunger. "We shouldn't," he rasped, but his voice betrayed him, cracking under the weight of what we both already knew. I pressed my forehead to his, closing my eyes. "We already did." He laughed once, broken, breathless, before pulling me back to him, fiercer this time, like surrendering was the only choice left. Every kiss was a confession, every touch an admission of all the walls we'd torn down. Minutes passed, maybe hours, lost in the pull of each other. It was reckless, wrong, unstoppable, and yet, in that moment, it felt like the only truth either of us had ever lived. When we finally slowed, when the heat between us gave way to trembling silence, Daniel pulled back just enough to look at me. His chest rose and fell hard, his voice barely steady. "There's no undoing this," he whispered. I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. "Then let's stop pretending we'd want to." The weight of those words settled over us, undeniable. For the first time, neither of us looked away. That night, in the stillness of the living room, Ethan and Daniel stopped being something we could explain, and became something we could no longer escape. The morning sun was merciless. It streamed through the blinds like a spotlight, exposing everything we had done, everything we could no longer take back. I woke first, my body stiff from the couch, but it wasn't the ache in my back that shook me awake. It was the sight of Daniel, still dozing against my shoulder. His arm was slung across me, heavy, claiming, as though the night hadn't been a mistake but a choice. For a heartbeat, I let myself savor it. His warmth, the rise and fall of his chest, the way his hand curled into my shirt even in sleep. But then the reality slammed into me like a tidal wave. My pulse raced. My stomach twisted. What had we done? "Daniel," I whispered, shaking him gently. His eyes fluttered open, groggy at first, until they focused on me. And then I saw it, the instant he remembered. He sat up too fast, running a hand through his hair, his breathing uneven. "God, Ethan!" His voice cracked under the weight of my name. "We shouldn't have." I cut him off, harsher than I intended. "Don't say it." He froze, eyes locking on mine. I could see the war inside him, the guilt, the shame, the craving. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't swallow. Finally, he spoke, quieter this time. You know this changes everything. I know. My voice was steady, but my chest felt like it was caving in. But pretending last night didn't happen won't make it disappear. We crossed the line. Together. He let out a bitter laugh, dragging his palms over his face. You make it sound simple. But it's not. There's you, there's me, and there's… He trailed off, unable to finish. We both knew what he meant. The shadow of the life outside this room, the people we were betraying with every breath we took in each other's presence. I stood, pacing, my body restless, my mind on fire. Then tell me, Daniel, if you regret it, say it. Right now. I'll believe you. The silence stretched. He didn't answer. Couldn't. That was the answer. I stepped closer, my voice low, urgent. You don't regret it. You're terrified of it. There's a difference. His hands dropped from his face, and when his eyes lifted to mine, they were raw, stripped bare. You think I don't want this? You think I don't wake up every damn day fighting not to look at you the way I do? His voice cracked, rising with frustration. But wanting and surviving aren't the same thing. Something inside me snapped. I closed the distance, gripping his wrist so he couldn't turn away. Then stop surviving. Just for once. Stop lying to yourself, and admit you need this as much as I do. The fire between us reignited in an instant. His breath quickened. His body leaned toward mine like it couldn't help itself. And then his mouth was on mine again, furious and hungry, as though kissing me was both the crime and the punishment. This kiss wasn't like last night's. Last night had been discovery, surrender. This was defiance. It tasted of anger, guilt, and something dangerously close to love. When we pulled apart, we were both shaking. His forehead pressed to mine, his whisper ragged. Ethan, we're killing ourselves. Then let's die honest, I shot back. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Our breathing filled the room, ragged, uneven, but somehow in sync. He didn't move away this time. He didn't run. Instead, Daniel sat back down on the couch, dragging me with him until I was beside him again. His hand slipped into mine, fingers interlacing like it was the most natural thing in the world. No words. No promises. Just the quiet acknowledgement that what had started couldn't be undone, and no amount of fear could put us back in the safe place we'd once lived. The weight of the morning pressed down on us, heavy, merciless. And yet, beneath it, something else burned, something dangerous, forbidden, but alive. For the first time, I knew with certainty, neither of us would walk away.